You're listening to the Falconry Podcast with Ben Woodruff. Hello, everybody. Ben Woodruff here with the Falconry Podcast. We're here today with John Griggs.
Hey, everybody.
And it's been a while since we've been on. Before we jump in, though, I want to let you know about John's YouTube channel.
Yeah, I run a channel called Falcon's Ledge, and on this channel I review flight sim and flight sim hardware. Also space sim stuff. I do a lot of flight videos, but occasionally I'll post falconry videos as well, mostly hunting videos. So if you're interested in aviation, flight sims, space sims, come and check it out. Link is going to be in the video description. If you're interested in just falconry stuff, I also do a vlog on TikTok under the same name about my new sharp-shinned hawk.
So everybody, please head over to his channel and his TikTok account and show him some love there, and please hit subscribe. We've been a little bit out of it for a while. We haven't had the chance to produce much content the past couple months, and the primary reason was I was in a car accident. Dun dun dun.
Ben likes to do that, by the way.
Oh, I do. It's the way of my people. It's a cultural tradition. So a guy just came out of his lane out of nowhere, ran me off the road, totaled my truck, and so fortunately I'm alive, and fortunately that the police officer who ended up arriving on the scene clearly stated, yeah, it was the other person's fault. And so luckily neither of us are dead, but my truck is, and took a lot of damage to my spine and a pretty hefty concussion. So I've been in a lot of physical therapy and concussion therapy. So just throwing out there to any of you, if you ever do have a concussion, the primitive brain therapy, that form of treatment actually does amazing wonders to help you reconnect the way your brain works and reconnect your memories and your neural processing and even your dexterity and bodily control. It's still, I'm not out of the woods yet with all that, but definitely on the mend. So,
in Ben's case, they just had to reconnect his neural net with his, Android brain.
They're like, okay, get this ADD up and running again. We need some energy. But you've had some life changes too. This year has kind of gone some weird directions, and why don't you tell a little bit about what your life situations had happened?
Yeah, it's been a really busy couple of months here. My wife and I decided to get a house. We weren't entirely positive if we were going to try this year. And, with the market the way that it is, maybe we shouldn't have. But, we decided to jump into it, and it was a little bit of an experience. We finally did find a house, and we moved into it and everything. Had a bunch of money set aside for things like, building a drone for falconry purposes, for doing peregrine training. But unfortunately, the air conditioning in my home went out the very day we moved in. And
when it was 1 billion degrees.
Yeah, it was right in those few days in June that we were having record temperatures.
Uh-huh.
That was the days that I didn't have any air conditioning. And it was rough. It was really rough, especially for a cold-loving person that, like me, or Ben is also. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of changed plans, so to speak. We had also been monitoring a couple of peregrine falcon nests.
Yeah, if you haven't been following, John drew out for the peregrine take, and so that was kind of one of your plans.
Yeah, and right before, so we had looked at a couple of houses. We had put in offers, and we had been rejected, and so we really didn't know what was going to happen in that regard. While we were monitoring these falcon nests, I had gone to them several times, and were monitoring, and they were present. It looks like they were doing nesting activities. And then we went down. Active. Oh yeah, we went down to Pole, and there were no birds. It was just ravens. It looks like they had been predated.
Yeah.
And then another nest that I checked.
Weather had taken out the actual nesting site.
Yep. So they relocated, and we were able to locate them again. But right after we found out that these nest sites weren't going to work for us, and there were still opportunities. I mean, there's plenty of peregrine nest sites that I could have gone to eventually. It's just right at that time we got accepted on the house. and things started rolling. So I'm like, okay, let's wait until we see exactly what the costs are going to be for closing and how much of the savings it was going to take and whatnot. And then the time we found that out is when we moved in. And that was the day that we found out my air conditioner was destroyed. We had to replace the whole system. Luckily, my brother-in-law runs an HVAC company called Deliverance Mechanical up in Cache Valley. So if you're looking for something like that, definitely go to him. He and his brother do an amazing job. They were in and out in like an hour. It was...
Oh, jeez.
I was really impressed. Very impressed.
You lucked out.
Yeah, and, I'm thinking he probably gave us a bit of a discount. I didn't really ask one way or another. But they did a wonderful job, and now we've got some cool AC, and I'm feeling a lot better. But
you can actually survive.
Yeah. As a result of all of that, plans had to change. But you see, the interesting thing about it is that the plans really didn't change. It was just kind of plan 1A and 1B. Because I had 2 trapping permits. I had my peregrine trapping permit, and I had another one that I'd held open from last year.
Yeah.
And I fully intended that if we were successful in finding a Sharpie nest, I was going to pull regardless. Yeah. Right?
Well, you wanted to do, you love the idea of doing a reverse mold too.
I would love to do that. And so we've been looking for Sharpie nests for 4 years now. Myself, Ben, another falconer here in the area that we're friends with. We've all just been looking for them, and they've been really difficult to find in recent years.
It's been rough because our area, our state, it's a desert. We have mountains, we have water, but it's not just like random lushness everywhere. And so a lot of our sharp-shins key in specifically on where is a little seasonal creek, a tiny thing that is going to be made out of spring runoff, like from snow melt. Like, okay, these snow patches are melting, for 2.5 months they're going to form a creek that then will dry out. Those have been dry from the beginning because we got like no snow. And so
it was bad this year
everywhere. Yeah, it's just, I did that one video looking and where there's always Sharpies, and a lot of them just chose not to even nest.
Yeah, I'm guessing that they were nesting more north of where we are, or in some other location where they were a bit better with water this year. So, and the last few years have been a little funny that way.
Yeah, and aliens keep abducting them. That's been a big problem out here in the West.
That's an issue.
Aliens abducting sharp-shins.
They'll all come back with anal probes or something. It'll be an interesting season for those catching passages.
Aliens abducted me. They did.
So. In addition to all of that, my health isn't all that great, so I can't do a lot of hiking and stuff to try to find them. And one important thing to do if you're ever looking for Sharpie nests is you really got to put the miles in. Just to give you an example, Ben, on my behalf and his own as well, has put in, countless miles in the last 4 years looking. And a good friend of ours who eventually was the one that actually physically found the nest, put in, I believe it's 75 miles this year.
Yeah.
Or, it was something like that. But, so what I've been doing, because I'm, a big dude and haven't been able to do the hiking part, is that I've been trying to find leads for Ben to check, and also for our friend to check. I don't know if he wants us to mention him on it, so that's why I'm just calling him friend.
Yeah. Well, let's double check with
that friend. Let us know. I am happy to give you full credit because he's a stud. So I gave him a lead that this one had been reported, and this other falconer had access to the land. So I coordinated it with him to have him go check, because Ben wasn't able to. He had prior arrangements. I went up there, and lo and behold, it was a Sharpie nest. And so we were able to pull 2. And so our friend and myself pulled 2, and we believe they're both male. We're not sure yet, because you kind of got to wait until they've grown out a bit. So
they fill out and make absolutely positive.
And then you can check weight. I mean, you could do a genetic test, but I didn't feel the need to, because I really don't care. I'm going to fly it the same way regardless.
Yeah.
But so I've got a Sharpie, and they're really, really cool birds. I'm really excited about it. He's the cutest thing in the world. But plans change.
And they did on my end too, with a car accident. I do falconry, but I'm also for a living, I'm a professional wildlife educator, so I have a lot of birds, both for falconry and education. I have a mix, and I even have an eagle right now that the government has me. It was an orphan that I have that I'm on a sub-permittee under a rehabber that I'm training to fly and to hunt, and then it's going to be released this fall. So I got all these things on my plate, and then I had this car accident where I didn't even have a truck. I still don't. I've been borrowing vehicles. I have a truck on order. And so I was planning on getting a sharp-shinned as well. And I've decided to scale back and just focus on fewer birds. What's the minimum I can get by with doing my job professionally, but also falconry. And so that's kind of been my story. And I ended up getting a little male Lanner falcon recently that was captive bred from a breeder, and I've just been focusing on him and finishing molting out my little male peregrine, and those guys are going to be my priority. I decided not to get a sharp-shinned, and even though I really wanted to, so going to be enjoying John's successes vicariously and help him. And but yeah, it's good to be working with a little Lanner. They're amazing birds. Everybody who follows this channel knows how much I love them and promote them. And it's kind of ironic because John and I have both talked about how urban hawking, the world is just becoming less and less wild. It's sad. There's nothing I can do about
sad.
it. It is, especially for John and I grew up in areas that were so rural, and we have watched them go from desert to farm to neighborhoods, to the neighborhoods being bulldozed and turned into office buildings, high-density apartments and stuff. And so it's like, well, we've often thought that like two of the greatest birds that could be used in the modern age for falconry in the increasingly urbanized world are the sharp-shinned and the Lanner falcon. Sharp-shinds are just amazing, and they give you a goshawk experience in miniature that's manageable, and there's tons of prey available. And Lanner falcons, we'll talk more about it later on other videos, but Lanners are so buoyant for their size that they're a long wing that you can really have in a tighter area, and a lot of the prey you can go after doesn't have to be so wild. You know, things like doves and pigeons and quail, things like that are totally good game. So, but yeah, that's kind of where we're both at. And that's honestly, when you're doing falconry, it is easy. We've both been guilty of this, but me even more so. It's easy to get in over your head because it's something you love. It's something you're passionate about. And but it's always good to reassess, where are you at? What is the wiser thing to do with your situation? What's going to allow the birds and yourself to have the best experience? So,
yeah, as much as I really love peregrines, with my current condition, with the way that I am physically, the way that things are with the house and everything, Sharpie's probably the best for me, honestly. I can't think of a better bird for my situation. So I'm happy where it ended up. And
flying a Sharpie is hawking of the highest order. It really is. If you think of micro hawking, there's like if you're hawking a kestrel or something, you're having a great old time. But like, good crap. Like, Sharpies are amazing. They're such...
If you want to see what they're capable of, there's a YouTube channel called The Art of Taxidermy. I'll send the link to Ben in the video description. I've chatted with this guy that runs the channel. He doesn't do falconry videos anymore, but he has a playlist of falconry that has some really neat sharp-shinned footage. And I used a couple of seconds of it in one of my videos with his permission. And it is just amazing how quickly that Sharpies reel in. Like, you'll have a bird that will flush. He does mostly car hawking, so it'll flush way down the road, and the Sharpie goes out, and it will just reel that bird in, close the distance. I mean, this thing had a head start on him. The fact that it went out of a car means nothing because they were going the same speed.
Yeah.
But it's just amazing, the acceleration and maneuverability of them. It is really hawking of the highest order. It happens right in front of you. Really cool stuff.
Sharpies and Merlins are, of course, very different in their hunting style, but they, of all the raptors available in North America, Sharpies and Merlins, to me, in their own respective realms, are like the perfect balance. Any bigger, you start to get more drag. Any smaller, you don't pack the punch and you don't have the musculature to have the speed you have. And those are the two birds that... Sharpies and Merlins are the only raptors I've ever flown where I caught prey by accident during the training stage. Where it's like, oh, you banked off and caught something. Usually it's all about orchestrating. You got your bird trained. Now what can you do to give them the greatest advantage? Okay, there's a duck pond with ducks on it. All right, I'm gonna go so that my bird's upwind. I'm gonna drive upwind, and I'm gonna carefully be on the other side of the truck. Release the falcon. It starts ringing up, and make sure it's at the right height before I walk to the pond and flush the ducks. Sharpies and Merlins is just like, go hunt. They're just so... I had a Merlin that took off from my fist at a passing dove and caught up to it. I wasn't hunting doves. I was trying to approach some starlings, and it... What? And, like, who is under a dove? And it's like, yeah, I can take that. And Sharpies are the same way, where they just get up and go and go and go and dodge and go and go and go. They are such a blast.
For sure. Yeah, the interesting thing is, if you remember back to when I was flying Isis... the first 100 kills or so with Isis were just your standard, I would give her the absolute most advantage. I would hold the slip until we were in a perfect position, so she would have to do the minimal amount of work to actually make the kill. Mm-hmm. But as you progress down, you would start letting them out earlier and wanting to get them to make a more effort. And I think that with the Sharpie, it's going to be very much that way. I was already seeing that sort of thing with Coopers, where my Cooper's Hawks would... the going out the window, because I primarily car hawk with my weight and stuff. It's just what I do. Your feelings on that regardless. Okay. So with the Coopers, the first couple of kills were that way, where I would try to make things perfect. But once the Coopers realized what we were doing and how this thing's worked, it was maybe 5 kills or so, I started experimenting with a lot different slips, like slipping it on things that were in trees and slipping things that were much further away, so they had to make a run at it. And I think that that's going to be where the sharp flying of the Sharpie, and of course Merlins too, when is allowing them to really showcase their skills by getting them to take harder and harder slips.
Mm-hmm. And it's fun to do that. It's good for the bird to have that athleticism and to work the muscles and really get them up and going, help them develop their a broader set of skills. It's like they have this bag of tricks that they develop, and every time they have a radically different slip that they're successful on, it helps their mind, and it's like it's so neat to watch, though. It's really amazing to watch. You've done really good at socializing. And you want to talk a little bit about your home situation and what other animals you have around that's really helped to have a good raising experience.
So we have a kestrel that we keep downstairs, so they don't come into much contact, and the kestrel just wanted to kill the baby Sharpie, so we just keep those apart. But we have 2 Hungarian Vizslas, and we don't really... they are really good with falconry birds because they know that they're off limits. So the moment they kind of realize, oh, well, that's one of their hawks, then they don't mess with them. Yeah. Any other birds are fair game, and they know it. And that's the way they act. That's why we have to keep them out of the backyard with the pigeons and the sparrows and things, because they will destroy the loft. Uh-huh. But, they're bird dogs. But we also have 7 puppies right now. Mm-hmm. Those we keep away from the Sharpie, but... I've let the dogs interact with the Sharpie, under supervision, of course, and the Sharpie interact with the dogs, and now the Sharpie's cuddling up with my Vizslas, and like he'll walk across the couch or hop across the couch and then get right next to the Vizsla and just kind of lay down and cuddle up because the Vizsla's warm. And the dog will sniff it. And the other dog will come up and lick it. It's just really a funny situation, and eyas are so funny that way.
Well, that's the best way to do it, though, is to have that extreme socializing where they're rock solid and used to absolutely everything that there could be. I know every day you have them outside. You send me updates, and I see you out there sitting on your steps, and you got your Sharpie out there with cars going by, the dogs running around the yard. It's perfect.
Yeah,
it's exactly what you want.
I decided that my front yard is going to be my sacrificial location. One of the things Mike McDermott mentions in his books is that if you tend to feed your accipiter in the same location, often even if it's outside, they'll oftentimes become a little bit territorial around that area because they're going to associate that area with food, just like they would say a plucking post or something like that. They're going to be kind of territorial of that spot. Absolutely. And so that's my sacrificial spot. If we go out there, then it's always going to have some kind of a food association, and we're just not going to go out there and chill together. We'll go to another place. Some of the changes that I made over what I did last time, I don't know exactly why I thought that this would work, but I made the mistake of branching my eyas kind of in the same place that it was going to be kept. And I don't know, you make some mistakes sometimes and you think about, I wasn't thinking about, 10 steps away. I was thinking about what was going to be best for them right now. And that was to be close to me all the time when I'm working and stuff like that. This time, my eyas has never seen the room he will be kept in, and he won't see it until he's going to be tethered in there. So,
yeah. If you're not familiar with accipiters, if you haven't raised one before from a little fluff ball, when they are young, they are the gentlest, cuddliest things normally.
Oh, they're adorable.
Just and the thing that happens is once their feathers start coming in, and there's all that blood in the feathers growing them in, when their feathers hard pen and the blood goes back into their body, their blood pressure goes up, their brain switches. And so it's very easy to just be like, oh, I'm just going to, treat them like a falcon and just always this and that and have them. And if you're not planning and thinking through where are you going to feed them, where are they going to be perched once their feathers have hard pen, you can end up having a very aggressive bird on your shoes.
Think of what you're doing right there right near hard penning. You're starting to lower weight so that you can start working on recall, doing lure training, and then going out and hunting, right? So they're hard penning. These things are changing. They're hungry for the first time ever. And boy, I saw the switch happen in my coops. I mean, he was still a serviceable bird. He did just fine, but there were a couple of behaviors that I didn't really like, and so I'm like, okay, this time doing another accipiter, I'm going to catalog the things that I did wrong and recognize them and say, yep, I made these couple of mistakes. They resulted in this kind of behavior. I'm not going to do that this time, and so that's what I've been working on. And luckily, sharp-shins are a lot more forgiving.
They're way more forgiving
than Coopers, but at the same time, I don't want to change my methodology. I want to try to train this bird as if it's a Cooper's hawk, and then try to establish my process. And what I'm saying by my process is really other people's processes, whether it's, advice that I've got from you or countless other falconers or Mike McDermott's books or whatever. But everyone kind of has to create their own process, and that's what I'm trying to do, is to improve the process that I had last time and see if I can get better results.
Well, that's smart. That's the right approach, is to say, hey, I'm going to plan. I'm going to think. I've noted any mistakes in the past. How do I avoid them in the present and the future? And then adding to that, of course, with accipiters, one of the most surefire ways to help a bird that is having issues is to hunt, and successfully catch quarry, to catch game. And so you're already striking a win by having a Sharpie, because if you had a goshawk or a Cooper's hawk or a sharp-shinned, of the three, anywhere in the United States, which is going to be the easiest one to find prey for day after day after day? A sharp-shinned.
Oh, yeah. I have lots of game here. I'm very excited to get it going.
Yeah.
Very, very excited.
And that's really kind of what it's about, is getting out and having that success and enjoying it. I mean, there's so many reasons why we get into the sport of falconry, but that is really, at the end of the day, if your bird's out there having success and hunting and successfully catching prey, you're going to be having a good time. They're going to be having a good time. The universe will be balanced. Dun, dun, dun. As well it should. And, where, it's hard otherwise. Like, and that's why normally there's, again, we've mentioned this a lot, but there's sort of this unwritten rule. A falconer will always have the best success if you are flying a bird that is native to your area, and you're hunting it on prey that is native to your area, and hunting it on prey that species normally hunts on its own in the wild, right? So, now there's always exceptions, from flying hybrids, or I'm flying a South African Lanner falcon. But the point is, if you have that formula, you're going to have success. You're flying a sharp-shinned, they're native here. You're flying it on sparrows and starlings and things like that, and doves, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a blast.
I've got all of that, so we got a nice mixed bag of things that Sharpies would kill anyway. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking forward to it big time, and it's been a lot of fun playing with him so far, and just having fun watching him do things, because if you've ever had eyas before, they do funny things, and they act like goofballs, and they even play with toys. It's just great. I love it. It's one of the most, if you take out the hunting part, because that's really what I'm here for. But if you take that out, this is some of the most enjoyable experiences in falconry, is seeing eyas be eyas. They're just funny.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Sharpies in particular, both in the baby stage up to all the way to hunting, if you talk to anybody who has actually flown them properly and hunted them, they'll usually be like, yeah, that's the most fun I ever had in falconry. That's the most fun I ever had with a bird, with my sharp-shin. And then you're like, so why are you not flying one now? And they're like, I don't know. It's like, because there's other reasons. Like, we want to challenge ourselves. We want to try something new. Maybe there's a species we're obsessed with that you always wanted a white Siberian goshawk, and you work for that, or, so I get it. But it's like, you have a Sharpie, you're going to have a blast. And that's one of the reasons, too, like you've talked about, where it seems like their numbers are getting lower regionally. Like the possibility of propagating them, of breeding them. There's not many people in the United States who do, and where micro-hawking is probably going to become more and more of a popular form of the sport, it might be wise to have falconers invest in starting breeding pairs of sharp-shins to make sure that both for availability to falconers, but as well as in case the numbers ever tank and they need to be repopulated like peregrines were, that is available. And
I don't think that this is necessarily like a humans bad guy kind of a situation. Maybe a bit. I think that they're actually being outcompeted by Cooper's hawks in urban areas and things like that. So, and some of that is kind of a natural progression, and could have been something that was occurring before we ever got here. But at the same time, these things are beloved animals. And if I do ever start any kind of propagation stuff, it'll be kind of targeted on birds that are going to be good for urban hawking, because I think that if falconry has future in cities and such, it's going to be in with these urban hawks, because it's getting harder and harder to travel. You're traveling further and further and further to these fields
because there's no edge of town. All the towns are merging, and to find open country to fly.
So it's like, okay, so you do one of two things, right? You either drive, which a lot of people do, and I think that's wonderful, and I think that form of falconry should continue forever, and I hope that people are still able to do that. But there's also a group of falconers who are starting to do it within the cities, and there are certain ways to do that. But so I've been thinking, okay, so what are the kind of birds that would be good for something like that? There are a few native birds that are great, but what are some of the other ones? Maybe some that we don't have here. So if I ever do it, that's what my approach will be.
Well, and that's kind of been what I'm going to do a video going into the depth about this a little more, but one of my big things about Lanners is most people, like the people who have a lot of easy access to them captive bred, they're just viewed as kind of nothing, because a peregrine can outperform them in traditional flight styles. And then in America, it's hard to get them because they cost you a small fortune, because the only people who fly them are like, usually flying them for education or occasionally for abatement. And so the best people, I see people in the Middle East, especially Egypt and in Africa, who hawk the crap out of them and just have enormous success. And a lot of them are just they are hunting no specific way. They'll hunt off the fist, they'll hunt from a pitch, they'll hunt in a cast, they'll do everything. And because Lanners have a broader wing and a lower wing loading, they can just go after all kinds of things. So I think the Lanner has a place as a way to kind of keep large long winging alive. Well, now another thing, John, that we've been talking a lot about since you were getting a Sharpie, we've been diving deep into different genetic studies and the taxonomy of New World accipiters, especially North American. North America. Well, in the United States, we only have a northern goshawk, a Cooper's hawk, and a sharp-shinned hawk. And goshawks is like, okay, I get northern goshawk. We have those Old World as well, but Sharpies and Coopers are weird. Coopers are just nutty. Like, what are they? We dug deep into a lot of genetic studies, and they are very closely related to goshawks. But they're weird. They're size-wise, they're in between. But sharp-shinned hawks are the oddest things on Earth, because what kind of a name is that? Their shins, they're sharp. What do you mean? Well, the skin on their shin, it's not really pudgy, so it's got a sharp edge to it. Really? You named a bird, a tiny bird, off of that physical attribute? Like a red-tailed hawk, you know what you're getting. The adult has a red tail. What about a golden eagle? It's got golden hackles. Okay, I get you. But, a sharp-shinned hawk? It's like the most ridiculous name. So the genetic studies, and again, taxonomists and biologists are always reviewing information and trying to understand, but everything seems to indicate that sharp-shinned hawks are most definitely derived from an old world sparrowhawk that around the beginning of the Pleistocene made its way over and dominated.
Oh yeah, and they're saying that the Cooper's hawk was probably the first accipiter here in the New World.
Mm-hmm. Which is weird.
Yep.
Like, what the heck are you?
Yep. Followed by the goshawk, and then finally at the very end by the Sharpie, which is interesting because the Sharpie probably has the biggest distribution, right?
Uh-huh. Oh yeah. They've dominated all the way into South America and diversified into, some people say, oh, these are different species, like the white-chested hawk. It's like, it's a sharp-shinned hawk with absolutely white chest. It's like, do we consider this a subspecies of a Sharpie now, or do we call it its own species?
Well, I think a lot of people, so when they look at a Cooper's hawk and a sharp-shinned hawk, they're like, well, obviously they're related. Well, of course they are. They're both accipiters. They both have fill a fairly similar role, but they're not related in the way that we might think. They're not close relatives. They're not as close relatives as to the Coopers and the goshawk. In fact, like, and Ben and I have gone back and forth on this through our communication.
Random hypotheses about it.
Yeah, we use Marco Polo and we go back and forth all day long about different things. And that was actually a conversation that I was having. I was wondering about the competition between Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks, and where the humans entered into that, whether or not we came in the game where the Cooper's hawk maybe. I wasn't sure which one came first, and so Ben started researching it and I started researching it and he sent me some stuff, and it's like, no, actually, the sharp-shin is not a direct relation to the Cooper's hawk. In fact, it's directly related to Eurasian sparrowhawks.
Uh-huh.
So it came from a completely different line. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not related. They obviously are.
I mean, all accipiters are if you go back far enough, but
right. They look alike because of convergent evolution, not because of direct familial relations, right?
Yeah, there is something, and we don't know what. There's something that encourages northern accipiters that are not goshawks in both the Old and New World. There's something that favors them having a red chest. No clue what it is. When you have Coopers and Sharpies go further south, by the time you're getting into Southern American countries, you see the what clearly came from a Cooper's hawk is something called a gun latches hawk. Look them up, and it almost looks like it crossed a a Goss with the Coopers as far as their coloration. They have almost no red on their chest. It's an entirely gray chest for the most part. And Sharpies, too. The further south you get, their coloration, it's like whatever benefit there is to having a red chest kind of seems to go away. So
Kestrels also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Kestrels are weird.
Go two directions.
Yeah,
the further south you go, the American kestrel, when you get down past Mexico on south all the way through South America, they go extremely light or extremely dark to where they lose Mallard stripes and have a pure white chest.
Or they're black.
Yeah, to where like the coloration of a female kestrel on its back, it's the same darkness on their chest, and you're like, what?
Yeah,
so that one's kind of weird.
And I guess I said because I know that I've seen lots of pictures of South American kestrels with straight white. Or hey, there's one, Cuba. I think it's the Cuban variety that has almost a completely white chest.
Yeah.
But then you keep going down there, and you end up with, both. Uh-huh. And I've even seen pictures of one, the melanistic variety with a leucistic, that's the right way to say it, right? Variety right next to each other, and they're just so different.
Wait a minute. How
really cool picture,
possible?
By the way. Yeah.
But so our thought on this is, okay, John and I grew up, we're kind of straddling two time periods here. A lot of our falconry mentors, a lot of the old-timers with so much experience, grew up being taught by their mentors to call a kestrel a sparrowhawk. Okay? We know a kestrel is a falcon, not a hawk. And we know a kestrel is a kestrel, which is a branch of the falcon family. For the most part, that common name has died out. I do know some bird watchers and some old-timer falconers that still call a kestrel a sparrowhawk.
It makes my eye twitch, just so you know. Every time it's said it, my eye twitches. It's terrible.
But it's like, when it comes to common names, how it works is whatever the general consensus kind of is what happens. Scientific names, when we have Linnaean taxonomy where we're actually classifying birds, the scientific name is solid in the ground. It has to be agreed upon, and it is used all over the world. But the common name doesn't matter. You can call a red-tailed hawk a badger monkey hawk, and if everybody else is doing it, that's what it is.
Why don't we start doing that? The badger monkey hawk. That sounds great.
Badger monkey hawk. I'm going to fly a You're a new apprentice? You want to fly a badger monkey hawk. They're the best. Oh, they're wonderful.
What else would you want to fly?
So that, or same thing, like we've said in our videos before, I get the fact that a Harris hawk is a Harris's hawk, officially, like in field guides. But I'm going to say Harris hawk because that's what most falconers say, and it's not the scientific name, it is the common name, so I don't care. And when we're on that, I'm like, oh, you know what? John and I were saying,
we don't call the red-tailed hawk either. We call it a red-tail.
Yeah,
and I think that it's mostly just because things are easier to say that way.
Shorten down, right?
Just like we don't usually use sharp-shinned hawk either. We use Sharpie. But yeah.
Or a Cooper's, we say Coops.
Coops, yep.
A lot of people call a ferruginous hawk a Fergie or a Frugy. Goss. Yep. Yeah. So knowing that, or like how many people say a Merlin falcon? It's a Merlin, right? So knowing that, we were both saying how ridiculous it is that the sharp-shinned hawk is not called the American sparrowhawk. It is really a sparrowhawk. It is. It came from the family line of Eurasian sparrowhawks. DNA tests have shown that to be true. It is a sparrowhawk. Most countries of the world have at least one species of sparrowhawk, if not more. And I'm like, to name it after the fact that its shins are sharp is like the silliest, most ridiculous thing. So John and I are like, hey, we ought to start a movement and try to encourage people to call them American sparrowhawks, because that's what they are. And if we all started doing it, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not changing the scientific name. It's still the same species scientifically, but it's like, why don't we call it what it is? That's like, it should be a no-brainer. So,
of all the birds in the United States and the way that they've been named, this is the one that I'm like, I really just want to start calling it a spar or American sparrowhawk or something, because I mean I know that it would really confuse a lot of birders. Still call them the kestrels, sparrowhawks too, but it's just one of those things where I like to be accurate, and it really is a spar. I know that there's other birds out that are like that. We like people calling buzzards or vultures buzzards. They're not buzzards.
Yeah,
hawks are bootios are buzzards. But
bootios are buzzards.
I guess that one doesn't bug me as much because a red-tailed hawk would still be a red-tailed hawk, even though we all already know that it's a buzzard, right?
Yeah.
But,
that's not as bad, and naming something a red tail, that's a pretty defining feature. But I mean, like in traditional terms, a male Eurasian sparrowhawk is called a musket, and that's what most people who fly a male sharp-shinned call them too. Are like, oh, I've got this little musket. It's like, because we know that it's a sparrowhawk, so we use the term. So we all encourage all of you to use the term American sparrowhawk or American spar. If you feel so inclined, feel free. And if in our videos we ever call them that is the reason why. We're starting a revolution.
Yeah, we're starting a revolution. We might just piss some people off in the process.
Everybody make posters and start protesting on the street. It seems to me that's everybody's protesting everything these days. So just stand on a street corner and be like sharp-shinned hawks are really American sparrowhawks. Change my mind. You know?
Yes, I did post that.
Because so good, so good.
I admit to it. I would do it. I will do it again.
Yeah. But even if not, that's never going to change in our lifetimes. That would be nice if it did. But even if it doesn't, as long as we understand, because I think there's a lot of depth. A sparrowhawk is not even just about size. A sparrowhawk is a very specific lineage of accipiter, and there's large and small sparrowhawks all around the world. You look at a black sparrowhawk. This thing's basically the size of a goshawk, but yet you look at the bill and you're like, oh yeah, that's just a giant sparrowhawk. So,
you look at its head and you can see spar all over the place.
You can see it.
That's actually one of the defining characteristics between the Coopers, the Goss, and our American sparrowhawk, right? Is that you look at their head and they have a distinctly different head shape. Yep. Gosses and Coopers have a fairly similar head shape.
Goss and Coopers look a lot more angry. But, Sharpies have more of that. What
the the bug-eyed, holy crap, I just saw something that's going to try to kill me.
It looks like they're scared for their life, and right at that moment, somebody grabbed their bum. You know? There's kind of like this eyes bugging out, an alarm.
But like there's also not the mandibles, but the sear and the beak are... They feel like to me that they're further forward, that it's kind of that area between the eye and the sear is stretched just a little bit and angled slightly down. Because we've been trying to sex this chick, this eyas, I've been just looking at every photo and everything I could find on them and talking to some of the other, accipiter experts on the forums and Messenger and stuff, and just trying to kind of figure out what he or she is. I'm pretty sure that it's a he, by the way. Just the feet and the size of the tarsus and the way that the head is shaped. It's very male, but we'll find out for sure when we weigh it. I mean, if it's closer in weight to a kestrel, it's a male. If it's closer in weight to a male Cooper's hawk, it's a female. So we'll figure out that when we come to it, But yeah, I've been paying a lot of attention to the structure of the head because I see a difference there. And that is something I also noticed because I'm on a lot of the birder sites, because not only are we falconers, we also love birds. So that's, we're going to be on those kind of things. And I try to help on some of the identification of birds of prey only. I don't delve into the songbirds, man. That's not my thing. And I think that's one of the things that people confuse the most is between a Sharpie and a Cooper's hawk. And there are some pretty distinct differences. And that head shape is definitely one of them.
That's a biggie. It's huge.
And it's more pronounced, in my opinion, in males than it is to females.
Yeah, that's fair.
As you shrink something down, and you can see the same kind of effect in a kestrel's skull in comparison to a large falcon's skull, they have a bit of a different look to them. And I think that it's the same thing when you look at most really small mammals in comparison to a larger counterpart. They're going to have those same kind of characteristic changes as you shrink them down in size. And it's not because they use a shrink ray or anything. It's just because smaller things require different shapes, I guess. I'm not a biologist.
That we know of.
I just play one on television. I play one in a podcast.
Hi, my name is Dr. Griggs.
Oh, jeez. No, I laid no claim to this title. I'm just a guy who likes birds.
Yes, you do.
Yes, I do.
Well, it's good to get back into things. Like I said, everybody, thanks for your patience with not having content up for a bit. We're gonna get back on, get to doing these again. And again, check out Falcon's Ledge, which is John's YouTube channel, but also that is the name of your TikTok, right?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Same name.
Check it out, and you can see videos of the progress of his wee little baby that's growing up fast. And but we appreciate you listening. Please hit subscribe to this channel as well. We're trying to get it up and running, and we appreciate your input and your questions. And as always, happy hawking.
See you later, everybody.